We are back for another live stream Q&A. So one of the things that I want to do, hopefully in the future, is provide links for each Q&A that take you to the topic that we're talking about. So hopefully my team will be able to figure those out on the different channels that we live stream to, like X. We can have links to each of the things, which helps people find what they are interested in talking about. All right, so the first question is from Sherry, all good, Verdiale, I think. My 35-year-old son has for the last few weeks been experiencing tingling and burning in the hands and feet, with burning in the calves and the forearm. He's very tired. They ruled out many things. They're thinking autoimmune, but had to see a neurologist, to which he can't get in until July 1st. I'm thinking the shots might be related. He unfortunately got one at the start. He has been healthy and is a weightlifter otherwise. They did a CT scan on his neck and head and said it was good as well as blood work. So they may not have done comprehensive blood work, and sometimes they don't analyze it according to kind of the functional lab values. But I think you're probably on the right track, as long as they did the usual things like check thyroid function, which I would assume they probably did, check things like B12, maybe some of the other B vitamins, maybe look into some of the other vitamins, maybe some that are less often checked, like vitamin A and some other things, zinc and copper. But yeah, it's probably something autoimmune, and it's certainly something that's neurological. The only thing in terms of testing, that I've ever seen from like a mainstream medical center come back positive is when they do a peripheral nerve biopsy and see something like small fiber neuropathy. So that's really the only thing that anyone has ever come to me with as a positive result from the mainstream medical system, even though there's a lot of quote unquote long COVID expert clinics. They're stuck within kind of a paradigm which doesn't change very quickly and doesn't like to experiment or use new tests. So unfortunately, you don't get any out-of-the-box thinking from them. Now, I think one of the theories that I've started to think might make more sense for autoimmune disease is something that Shabazz, this friend and colleague of mine, Shabazz Ahmed, mentioned to me, that he thinks that, if you start with the assumption that the body almost always is trying to help you in some way by maneuvering around a bad situation, then you would ask yourself, well, why is the body attacking itself? And one of the reasons it might be attacking itself is to try to destroy an enemy that's within itself, right? So that's one theory, which kind of makes sense. I mean, it kind of goes along with my thinking on a lot of other things, and it just gives a good kind of cohesive and view of what illness is. And so I think it's a good starting point for trying to figure out what's going on, is to assume that the body's not making a mistake, it's doing the right thing by you. And so then you think, well, if we interfere with that, what's going to happen? So, you can interfere with it by completely shutting off the immune system to stop the symptoms from manifesting. And yeah, sure, the symptoms will go away, but since the body's completely unable to, in that case, destroy the thing it's going after, right? It can't seek and destroy an infection or a toxin or whatever, it can't root it out, can't get rid of it. That thing, if you continue to be exposed to it, you'll just collect more and more of that. If it's an incomplete kind of solution, like you don't completely shut off the immune system, but it's able to weakly attack that thing, go after it. And if the thing is alive, then it may retreat further into other parts of your body where it's harder to be, where it's not as easy to find it, right? So, or it might develop, a stronger foothold through the use of things like biofilms. So anyway, I think that the approach is just fundamentally flawed, right? And you can follow that flawed approach either through the mainstream medical system by taking something like steroids, or even antibiotics that aren't given at the high enough dose or for long enough and have side effects. Or you can go to a naturopath or alternative doctor who doesn't understand that the body's doing the right thing and tries to give you something just to suppress the symptoms. That's the purpose, and not really give you a cure. So, and even people who go down the lifestyle medicine path, they may not go far enough, right? They may think that if I stop eating these foods, my symptoms go away. I don't have psoriasis anymore. Fantastic. I mean, it's very difficult for people to make the commitment to stick to something that will get rid of, a disease like an autoimmune disease through diet alone. But if people really stick to the AIP diet and do a little bit of detox, sometimes their symptoms vanish and their autoimmune disease is gone. And yet, I don't think that they've actually fully solved the problem. They have solved it kind of halfway, because they used to be able to eat those things. And I'm not talking about like real toxic junk food, but I'm talking about, nutritious food like eggs and dairy and, maybe the traditional wheat, the older wheat, the pre-modern wheat. So not toxic versions of these things, but like, healthy versions of real whole foods that they used to be able to tolerate and now they can't. So they should be able to heal enough that they can tolerate real food. And again, I'm not talking about vegetable oil or even really modern wheat, which itself might be, just, undigestible for a lot of people. But I'm talking about real food. And for example, like some people just can never again tolerate sugar. And that's not a normal state of affairs. They spent a lot of their life, being perfectly fine with sugar. So I think that they have to go to a deeper level of healing to really root out the problem to the point where they are, again, able to tolerate a normal diet that they at least were able to tolerate at some point in their life, a normal, healthy diet and a normal, healthy lifestyle. And without reintroducing some of the things that were never healthy to begin with, like, leaving the lights on at night, not getting any sun, not grounding. So some of these things you just have to decide that I'm going to do what I need to do and stop doing what is harmful for me for good, because if I reintroduce them, then I'll eventually get sick again because it'll create the same environment that allowed me to get sick the first time around. So there's a bit of a fine line between these two things, but I hope I'm making myself clear that there's a distinction between the two. So the evident, clear distinction is that you should be able to get back to doing normal, healthy things without getting sick again. So if you're having to eliminate things that are inherently good for human beings, then there's still a problem. If you're having to eliminate them in order to control your symptoms. But oftentimes the first step is the same, regardless of what your ultimate goal is, which is to eliminate those things in order to allow detoxification to happen, in order to stop like a vicious cycle, in order to start healing the gut and other tissues. So yeah, without more information, obviously I can't give you, exact advice on what to do, but certainly he could do worse than just starting an autoimmune paleo diet and seeing what happens, and then fixing the light environment, avoiding artificial lights as much as possible during the day, and absolutely avoiding them after sunset, sleeping properly, doing some brain detox, nervous system detox with the brain detox cream that we have a link for. All right, so Jenny says, Dr. Haider, having a friend who has trouble producing urine. It doesn't matter how much water, etc., that he drinks. Some days doesn't produce any urine or less than normal urine. Did you even hear that in case of post-COVID, post-vaccine? Did you ever hear that? Probably. He's been to several doctors, and at the end, they won't believe that he drinks enough. The case has been going on for several months. February 2022, he's really concerned about it. So I'm assuming that his creatinine is normal, and there's no sign of like kidney failure, because that would be the first thought that would come to mind, is that you have kidney failure. Your kidneys are unable to produce urine, so you have a kidney failure. And so, if he hasn't done all the testing for that, which, at least they must have done a BON creatinine, like a CBC, BMP, the usual blood work. So the BMP or the CMP would have the creatinine on it. But you can also check, what is this, statin C, and some, tests for autoimmune issues. But yeah, it's an interesting case. I haven't seen anything like that before. And I would have trouble explaining it. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the case and think about it for a while to understand why, if he doesn't have kidney failure, how he can get by not making urine. And the other thing would be to actually measure his urine, do a 24-hour urine collection, just to confirm the amount of urine that's going in, and try to have him measure how much he's drinking, So it's certainly possible that for some reason he's sweating out more liquid than normal, like maybe that's what's going on. Maybe he's losing fluid, from sweat or into his stool or something. I don't know. You didn't mention his bowel movements, or his thirst has diminished and he's just not aware of it. So people aren't super aware of their own bodies. It sounds like there's something interesting and weird, but you'd have to study it more to figure out exactly what it is. And first of all, confirm that there is something weird going on and unusual by tracking exactly how much he drinks during the day, measuring it all, and then measuring how much urine comes out. I mean, he could do that himself, right? So measure every single ounce of urine that comes out, measure every ounce of fluid that goes in, take some, just like describe his stool, make sure it's not like liquidy and loose, and he's not, and how many times a day he's having it. And then start to, ask, well, where could the fluid be going, right? Is it collecting in his body? I mean, if it's been going on since February 2022, that's a long time. I mean, if it wasn't leaving his body, if he was drinking and it's not leaving his body somehow, then he would be pretty swollen up by now. So it's got to be leaving somewhere, or he's just not drinking enough, or there's some other weird thing going on. I can't explain. Anil says, I have chronic sore throat, and anyway, like, it reminds me of this story, that I heard from people that I trust. I mean, they're not, people that would make something up, and it's something that's inexplicable. But there was this crazy, person who had kind of lost his mind. So in Eastern countries, they have these people that they think are like I don't know how you would describe it, but people who started off kind of as like spiritual aspirants or something, and then they ended up kind of taking a wrong turn somewhere and kind of lost their mind. Maybe they didn't take a wrong turn, whatever. They just seem to be crazy, right? But it's not a kind of crazy person that you wouldn't want to be around, that would be dangerous to you or something like that. But it seems like more like a religious, spiritual, or holy man type of spirit, it's crazy person. So that version of crazy, who used to like go, like people used to invite him over just for, they wanted to have him around. And he was famous for like eating an incredible amount of food. Like one time, apparently he ate like an entire goat or something, and his belly would get really big. It would get really, really distended. And then he would like rub it or something, say something, and then his belly would go back to a normal size. So anyway, I doubt that something like that's going on in this case. I don't think that you're drinking water and it's just disappearing, magically. But yeah, something else is happening that we don't fully understand, and we need more information. All right, moving on. All right, so Anil says, I have chronic sore throat, hoarseness. The throat and the chest are burning, more so on the left side, sometimes with deep inhalation. All of these happened post-COVID in 2021, I think. I've tried everything, including allopathy, Ayurvedic medicine, homeopathy, but no sign of relief. Some say I have GERD, LPR, MCAS. So yeah, so it's hard to say. You could have obviously GERD, you could have MCAS, you could have other things, and you know, medical traditions, including allopathic medicine, Ayurvedic, and every other medical tradition, they really depend on the practitioner. They're really practitioner specific. So um, with allopathic medicine, it depends on who you go to, whether they're going to be able to figure out your problem from their perspective or not and be able to help you or not. Same with any other tradition, Ayurvedic, homeopathy. And what makes it even more complicated with outside the mainstream is that uh, non-mainstream medical traditions have a lot of different kind of like families or schools of thought within them. So there's not just one Ayurvedic medicine or one traditional Chinese medicine. There's probably thousands of schools, and some of them were you know just passed down within families. So it kind of does them a disservice to group them all under one giant umbrella sometimes. So my point here is that if you didn't have success with a particular Ayurvedic practitioner, don't discount every Ayurvedic practitioner. Try a different one, or whatever's available to you. Try somebody else, whether they're in the Ayurvedic umbrella or under the homeopathic umbrella, or even allopathic in some cases. So I mean, I guess this is a good time to just go back to my constant refrain of understanding everything from a perspective of toxins and nutrients, and assuming that your body is trying to help you. So the symptoms that you're experiencing, the sore throat, the hoarseness, the chest burning, all this stuff, these are symptoms of a war that your body is fighting inside of you. So they're not the symptoms of the enemy, right? So the enemy is not usually, maybe in some cases it is, but the enemy that you're fighting is not usually causing your sore throat, your hoarseness, your chest burning. It's your immune system fighting it off, or trying to maneuver around it in some way, trying to maneuver around the problem, whatever the problem is. And the problem is going to be some sort of combination of nutrient deficiencies and toxins. And nutrient deficiencies include things that are, you're missing some vitamins or some, healthy sunlight, or some, the electrons that come from the earth when you do grounding, or intimacy is missing from your life, or you have a lack of gratitude in your life, or a lack of positive emotions, positive interpersonal relationships. You don't have the right, enough like positive thinking, basically. And you also may not believe the right things about, health and illness. So some of those things sound ridiculous, but they're really not. They're actually more important than the things that you think are less ridiculous and that are more important. And then there's going to be toxins, which can include physical things, heavy metals, plastics, other chemicals, pesticides, spike protein, and things like infestations with parasites and infections, chronic infections, and also negative thoughts, negative emotions, hatred, fear is a big one. So anger and fear are the two primary ones for most people. Like I said before, I mean, lack of intimacy. I mean, some of these things you can consider them as or like poor relationships versus good ones. They have some toxic effects versus the good ones having beneficial effects. Artificial lights, especially after sunset. So that's basically what's leading to the symptoms. It's just, and so if you can correct enough of those things, give yourself the nutrients and the environment that your body needs to be healthy, then it will start to become healthy. And the body's really good at kind of reestablishing a balance as long as it has the building blocks that it needs, and it doesn't have too much holding it back, right? but in some cases, it can kind of enter into like a stuck situation where even when you give it the building blocks and you've eliminated the introduction of new toxins due to perhaps mistakes you've made in the past, or just the body has gotten stuck in like a rut and gotten into a habit, a habitual kind of mode. Sometimes you need to push it a little bit, and you need to give it a little bit of help to wake it up and get things headed back in the right direction. So sometimes there does seem to be this inertia problem where even though you give it all the resources it needs and you eliminate all the incoming harms, it's kind of like stuck in the same rut, and you have to kind of give it a shock. So there's different ways of doing that, this shock therapy. What seemed to work for me was I just jumped into a cold plunge, and that was enough of a shock, and I was doing enough other things right already that all I really needed was this one little push in the right direction to kind of like wake up my body and the immune system and just make it realize that, oh, there's still a problem here. I'm going to fix it now. I'm going to go back to fixing it. So whatever that is, I mean, it seems to be like a memory or like a habit, a habitual state of being, and imprinted into the nervous system and the immune system and all the body's systems. And you just need a kick in the pants to get out of it sometimes. And there's other ways of doing that as well, but that one seems to work for a lot of people. But some people may not be ready for that either. Some people still may need to do some work on detoxification and supportive work, and getting rid of certain things from their diet, fixing up their lifestyle, focusing on the things they really don't think are important, but which could be more important than the things they are focusing on. So if you're not better yet, go back to the drawing board and look at the fundamentals. Go and ask, what am I not doing that I didn't think was important, but maybe it's much more important than I thought. Maybe it really is the lack of intimacy, and even though I hate people, I'm just going to learn to love them and find some good friends and have some intimate relationships. And the other thing is to understand that illnesses are trying to help you, right? It's not a bad thing that's happening. Just like pain is not inherently bad, it's actually protective. So if you couldn't feel any pain, you would not. You would. Most people who don't feel any pain, they die really young, very, very young. Okay, so. And before they die, they get all sorts of terrible injuries, and they become, deformed, and eventually they die pretty young. So yeah, there is a medical condition where people don't feel pain, and generally speaking, they don't last very long. So pain is meant to send you a message that, hey, you're doing something dangerous and harmful, so stop doing it. And if you continue further, it's going to be even worse for you. It's going to really, it's going to hurt you even more. So pain is a blessing, and illness is a blessing, because it's basically a pain signal. It's telling you that, hey, there's something wrong here. And it's not always about like, I need to stop doing something. Like I said before, it might be that there's something that's gotten into you, and you need to just go through the fire, the discomfort, until you get it out, right? It may be, a lot of times the people who have these serious issues, they're going to have to go through detox reactions and Herxheimer reactions and worsening of their symptoms. All of this stuff is going to be part of the healing process. And so you have to be prepared for that. Like I've seen people in incredible pain sometimes when they've been chronically ill with something really severe for a really long time. There are sometimes periods of incredible discomfort that they can go through, and talking to somebody who's had experience helping a lot of people through this process will help to avoid the severe discomfort, because the severe discomfort comes from doing too much too quickly. Okay, so it comes from dislodging too much too fast and overwhelming the body's ability to detoxify itself. So just knowing what to do is it's only half the battle, right? Especially if you want to make it all the way through, because if you overdo it and you end up in one of those extreme situations where the pain is so bad that you're hospitalized and, they want to give you morphine and stuff. Um, all those medications, the morphine, the painkillers, they will push you back a few steps, and you're much more likely to give up. You're much more likely to do something that's gonna, like I said, like taking morphine or other medications or doing a surgery or something, for example, to deal with a sudden acute problem that you could have skipped. So for these reasons, you really need to talk to somebody who's an expert. So the person I would go to for really complicated problems is Shabazz Ahmed. So you can find him at mygotodoc.com/Hakim, Hakim. And yeah, so he can help you watch out for those pitfalls and do it properly, do it step by step, so that you just can't do everything at once. It's not possible. You have to save some things for later, and it's really a step by step process. Chantal says, I have a question. I am now at 2 years and 9 months of long COVID. I had pulmonary embolisms. I live in South Africa, and a pulmonologist and doctor have told me the damage caused to my lungs by COVID is cellular. My lungs are in constant pain, and I'm often very out of breath, even if I'm doing nothing. My oxygen levels often drop at night to the 70s. My CT scan and x-rays are clean, so they say I don't have structural damage, but functional damage in the cells in my lungs caused by COVID. They have no treatment for it, except to control the pain and asthma medications to open my chest. Is there nothing else I can do to treat this? I can't work or do much because of my lungs and a string of other problems caused by long COVID. Myalgic encephalitis, POTS, liver damage, heart damage. Thank you. Yeah, you can heal. It may not be easy. It sounds like a complicated case, and I would talk to Shabazz. So mygotodoc.com/Hakim, Hakim. So, maybe there is mitochondrial damage and you need to fix it. So that is fixable. And there is very likely to be kind of like I don't know, what you might describe as a neurological, kind of like a software problem, so since there's no structural damage, it's functional, right? So what does functional mean? It's neurological, right? That's what, partly, right? So there's other functions, obviously, in the cells, and one of them is the mitochondrial, the function of the mitochondria to create energy. But there's a lot of functional issues that can be there that wouldn't show up on such a gross scan as a CT or an X-ray. It might show up on something that could look like with a microscope into your cells. But yeah, but it could be kind of like also from the nervous system perspective that the signals coming into your lungs are not appropriate. And so you should do Buteyko breathing. You spell it Buteyko. As part of your protocol, there should be this breathing exercise to help retrain your lungs. You should try to get off the asthma medications because they're just going to make it worse ultimately, even though they improve the symptoms. In the short term, anything that's just a Band-Aid approach like asthma medication is going to worsen the problem in the long run. So that I would try to taper off and try to deal with it without prescription drugs. So you need a comprehensive protocol. I mean, when it's to this stage, occasionally somebody will find like a easy kind of like hack kind of approach using, if you haven't tried ivermectin, it's certainly worth a try. If you haven't tried some of the, the simple approaches, spike detox, and obviously some of the simple lifestyle approaches, definitely worth a try. So I don't know what you've done, what you haven't done. Spending more time outside, avoiding the toxic blue light, getting plenty of sun will probably do you really well. You'll probably get a ton of benefit from that, especially if you have darker skin. If you have lighter skin, you got to be careful, to gradually build up the solar callus or your tan, essentially, so that you don't burn. But you need sun throughout the day. You need deep sleep, and you need brain detox to help support nervous system healing. so that your lungs are getting the right signals. And you need, you know, to support mitochondrial health, that involves, you know, what you eat and, you know, nutrients and sunlight and grounding and all the stuff that works for mitochondrial health works for every other part of your body to make it healthy, right? So it's there's nothing that's specific to certain things that doesn't help everything else, because everything is connected. So you can definitely get better, but you have to, as much as possible, avoid things that are going to hold you back from improving and that are going to actually lead to worsening over time of your problems. So almost all prescription drugs, especially the ones that are just prescribed for symptom management, so the asthma medications, and if you're taking pain medications, yeah, so you mentioned that they have no treatment except to control the pain. So yeah, the pain medications also will be likely causing a problem. So I would, guys, I gotta plug in, so just give me a second. I would try to get off of them and onto something more natural, because the, you know, again, they get rid of the pain, but they usually worsen the underlying issue. I mean, I was just talking to somebody who, you take like a narcotic for a biliary spasm, you know, the pain of a biliary spasm, and it oftentimes worsens the biliary spasm itself. But yeah, when you have pain and you suppress it, then the pain just gets worse. The body's, again, is trying to send you a signal, and it's as though your hand is inside a fire and it's hurting, and you just try to numb it up, and then the burn goes even deeper and it hurts even more. So painkillers, unfortunately, don't solve the problem. They, over time, they work less and less because the body is resisting their effects. It's down regulating the receptors they're attaching to so that it can send you the message that it wants to send you. So yeah, probably the most important thing to do is to stop treating it with the drugs that they're giving you. And sometimes that's all you need to do. And after some time, it'll just heal. And unfortunately, you know, it reminds me of some of this, you know, the outcomes in chronic psychiatric illnesses like schizophrenia before the age of antipsychotics, right? The drugs that they prescribe now for schizophrenics. So I think maybe it was The Emperor's New Drugs or one of the other books, but there were a couple of books I read back in the day describing the terrible outcomes with psychiatric drugs. So anyway, the point is that before the age of antipsychotics, if somebody became schizophrenic, if they lost their mind and started hallucinating and hearing voices, whatever, symptoms of schizophrenia, paranoia, stuff like that. There was, I think, something like an 80%, within 2 years, 80% of those schizophrenics would kind of return to normal life and become functional, at least, right? Some of them would go back to being completely normal, but other ones would just be, at least functional in society again, and 20% of them would still have a significant problem. And after the age of antipsychotic medications, and after their use became widespread, those numbers flipped. So 80% never recovered. They had to stay on the meds for life, essentially, and only 20% seemed to get better and go back to being able to function outside of like a mental hospital. So I think it's the same with all diseases that you treat with medications. If you start treating diabetes or high blood pressure or heart disease or anything with Band-Aid approaches, the underlying problem will just get worse and worse. Pain disorders, autoimmune disease, etc. It's a way of seeing the world that I think all the evidence confirms it, that I've seen as a physician for the last 15 years. Connie says, I have had long COVID for almost 4 years, and my digestion is very affected. A history of SIBO and H. pylori. It gets a little better, and then I tank again. Someone posted about your immunity herbals, and I got significant relief. Amazing. Wonderful work. Somebody took the immunity herbals and got significant relief. So where can I find these and guidance on which ones to take? So it's mygotostack.com, MYGOTO, mygotostack, STACK.com. So the herbals specifically are, I think, the two most important things there are actually the detox spike buster and the immunity herbals. And the immunity herbals include the curcumin, nigella sativa, and dandelion, and these all have anti-spike effects and significant effects to support your immune system to do what it needs to do. And then the detox spike buster helps your body to eliminate spikes. So, recently there was some confirmation that a lot of the Pfizer batches did actually have graphene oxide in them. So the spike buster has fulvic acid and humic acid, which help to bind and eliminate graphene oxide. It's got EGCG, which helps to kick the spike protein from where it's stuck inside your body. So it helps to prevent it from binding to receptors, so it becomes free floating, and then the nattokinase, serrapeptase, and bromelain can break it down and help to eliminate it into the urine. So that's what the spike buster is. And combining these two, you get the base spike detox that Peter McCullough published a paper on. The immunity herbals you would take with food for absorption to improve absorption, and the spike buster you would take without food. So you'll find them both there. The immunity vitamins is probably the most popular supplement, and it was based on, and also just by the way, FYI, we still have an anniversary sale going on, 25% off for the next 2 days, 11 hours. So run over there if you guys have been planning to buy something before the sale ended. How much is it? Yeah, 25% off. That's probably the biggest sale we've ever had. All right, so the spike buster itself, we with the new improved formula that we came out with the bromelain specifically, we were able to make that 25% cheaper than the initial spike buster formula that had the augmented NEC in it. Anyway, what I was going to talk about was the really probably the bestseller on that website is immunity vitamins. It has vitamin D3, vitamin C, quercetin, zinc, bromelain, a little bit of bromelain, not a lot, and just to improve quercetin absorption and the K2. So this was a formula that I think it had initially been, at least most of the formula, the core of the formula, the D3, C, quercetin, and zinc, had been recommended by people like Dr. Zelenko before he passed away, and picked up by a lot of other people, including myself. What I saw was a chance to improve it, because when you're taking a lot of D3, 500 international units is a pretty significant dose. You're going to absorb more calcium, and in order to metabolize that properly, you want to have vitamin K2, which is another fat-soluble vitamin. And then what I realized was that quercetin, which is important for helping get the zinc into cells where it had an antiviral effect. The quercetin wasn't well absorbed without bromelain, so we added a little bit of bromelain to improve quercetin absorption. And that, filled up the capsules and gave us the ability to ship something without any additives or useless fillers that are actually worse than useless, harmful. But this is really, as I see it, this was meant as something to be used as a last resort. If you start to get sick, you want to take it, or as a preventative for short periods of time. But I wouldn't suggest taking pretty large doses like this one of 5,000 IU D3 for like years at a time. For long term, you want to really optimize diet and lifestyle. So you want to get sunlight, because D3 is made from sunlight, but and people kind of call it the sunlight vitamin, but it doesn't give you all the benefits of the sunlight. So it's kind of like you have to take nutrients in their natural forms in order to get the full benefit and to avoid side effects and toxicities even, right? So it's not that D3 is toxic, but it can become toxic if you take too much of it for too long. And I've seen this, and actually I need to go and finish the research and publish, an article hopefully soon on a theory, is based on some research that was done suggesting that vitamin D3, it may be purposely lowered by the body when there is, kind of an autoimmune issue going on, and raising it will sometimes trigger the symptoms of the autoimmune disease. And from the perspective I was talking about earlier, maybe that's actually a good thing, So people would usually consider that to be bad, but maybe that's actually good. Maybe the body needs to go through that period of symptomatology of autoimmune disease in order to, again, root out the problem that's in there within some of the body's cells. So it needs to attack the cells and get rid of the problem. But the best way to do that would be to get sunlight so that your body naturally makes vitamin D and gets everything else that comes along with vitamin C normally. So the effects of UV and infrared and red and UVA and all the other effects that sunlight provides to boost mitochondria and change the way blood vessels interact with each other and to improve the structure of the water in your body, in your blood vessels, and all the anti-inflammatory effects that come along with sunlight. So and the improvement in your sleep and the deepening of your sleep. So taking one little piece of that puzzle and just megadosing it without everything else can cause problems. So whole foods are everyone agrees that it's healthier to eat whole foods than to eat refined foods, and people don't realize that they are essentially making the same mistake with some vitamins, because they are ultra refined foods, right? Like you take a food like an orange and you have to ultra refine it to get enough vitamin C to take 800 milligrams or 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C in a capsule. You'd have to eat a tremendous amount of oranges to get that much vitamin C, maybe a ton of oranges. And so it's useful, and I think it's better than resorting to ending up in a hospital, so it's kind of like a last resort kind of option when, you pull in case of emergency kind of thing, right? So, or push this button in case of emergency. If there's an emergency, you take it so that you get through the problem that you're faced with. And then you go and address your lifestyle. You lose the weight, you get the sun, you get the sleep, get the vitamin D from cod liver, whole cod liver, not cod liver oil, but like by canned cod liver, or from sardines or whatever. Get vitamin A from animal liver, and vitamin K from vegetables, and also vitamin K2 from dairy products, ghee and butter and other things. Vitamin E from the vegetables again as well, and all the other vitamins. Probably maybe take a oyster supplement, powdered oyster supplement or something to get zinc and copper, and just get your things from natural sources. If there's something you can't optimize from like food sources, you might get like a seawater supplement, right? Like a purified kind of extract of seawater, and add that to your drinking water to get some of the minerals that are just missing from the soil, and to get some more magnesium than you'd be able to get otherwise. All right, so digestion, one of the things that is very helpful, I've spoken about it before, is triphala. It's through a 3-herb combination from Ayurvedic medicine. You can titrate it up pretty high and take it multiple times a day and see how it works. Start off very low doses and gradually work your way up. But it's best to, when you're taking herbs, to all maximal effect is to, if they're in capsules, dump them out into some warm water, let them steep for a little while, and then drink the tea along with the powdered herb. So just mix it up. If it doesn't dissolve, then just mix it and swallow it in suspension. But if you can't tolerate it, just swallow it in capsules. But yeah, you'll get better effects from all the herbs, including the triphala, if you can stand the taste and stomach it. It doesn't taste too bad, but it does have an astringent quality, so it's a little bit difficult to stomach for some people. And certainly AIP diet can be very helpful, and focusing on really rooting out the underlying problem, and not trying to, so you might make a mistake by killing off H. pylori or the SIBO or whatever. Like, if you if you fix the problem, then those things will resolve themselves. And there's some, and some people think that SIBO H. pylori is actually beneficial for some people. It's a beneficial infection in some cases. Cindy Hammer says, I just saw a study talking about omega-3s being unnecessary. I've taken them for years. What's your thought on this study? I thought it helps the brain recover after long COVID. So I think it's worth looking into some of the work Chris Masterjohn has done on omega-3s. And I certainly, I don't think it's helpful. I used to think that it might be, but I don't think that it's a good idea to take cod liver oil, to remove the oil from the fish liver or from the fish and take it separately. I don't think that's helpful. So when omega-3s, oils or fats are in kind of like the living matrix of the food that they originated from, they're protected from degradation, oxidation, all of that. And when they're taken out, they add antioxidants, but I still think that there's a problem. And a lot of the data bears that out, and perhaps it's because the quality of the omega-3s wasn't good, or the quality of the fish oils was poor in some of the studies, who knows? And maybe they were oxidized, but if you get a good quality one like Rosita, maybe it's not a problem. But I think really, Masterjohn and a lot of other people, and I think myself, will agree that it just makes sense that you should just eat the fish, right? Don't try to, and one of the reasons is, one of the biochemical issues is that they have an anti-inflammatory effect initially, and then they can actually later on, many months down the line, have this pro-inflammatory effect on the backside of dosing them. So yeah, I would not take omega-3s. They may be causing more problems, and some people have to actually detoxify from the omega-3s that they've been taking for years. And so Masterjohn, I think on YouTube and on his other channels, there's if you Google, Chris Masterjohn omega-3, you'll probably find it. But one of the videos he talked about a lady that he consulted with, who they did suspect, he and she both suspected that she had omega-3 toxicity, and she got better when she stopped taking the omega-3s and did some things to counteract the effects that they may have had on her body. So again, there are short-term positive benefits that people see. So I remember one patient, we tried a lot of things and nothing seemed to be working. He even tried regular fish oil at the high, 2 or 4 grams a day, that was recommended by the FLCCC. And then he tried Vascepa, which is a purified, prescription form of, I think just EPA it's not EPA and DHA, it's only EPA. And he came back and he was just like, oh my God, I feel so much better. I wish I'd started with this. So again, for short term, using it in like a pharmaceutical dosage and for a specific reason, it may be part of a protocol and it may make sense in certain cases, but not I don't think for long-term use. In the long run, you want to eat just fish. You want to eat, and so why I keep saying sardines is because you can get them very small, and so they're at the bottom of the food chain. They haven't had a chance. You have a tiny fish, and a bigger fish eats it, and a bigger fish eats that, and a bigger fish eats that. So the bigger the fish gets, the higher up in the food chain you go, the more the toxins can accumulate. So the toxins are being eaten at every level of the food chain by the fish or the animals or whatever. And each level of the chain, there's a certain bioaccumulation of toxins, and the fish at the top of the food chain have the benefit of all the bioaccumulation below them, right, all the way up. So they'll eat, the second bigger fish, the biggest fish at the top will eat the second biggest fish. This doesn't always apply, obviously. Whales eat tiny, tiny fish, so they may not bioaccumulate toxins the way other fish do. But the idea there, anyway, is that the larger fish, in some cases at least, may bioaccumulate more toxins than the smaller fish. So if you want to get omega-3s, your usual choices are going to be the smash fish, salmon, mackerel, anchovies, sardines, and herring. And, salmon are a fish that can be farmed. Sardines can't be farmed. They're a deep sea fish. that is always going to be wild. Whenever you buy them, it's going to be a wild sardine. That's one, positive. And number two, you can get tiny ones in cans. You can eat the whole fish. You're not just eating like fillets. You're eating bones and cartilage and brains and everything, right? So nose to tail eating is pretty easy with a sardine. So there's a lot of benefits, and it's very, very helpful for people. They're a good source of sulfate, which probably most people need for healing because of our exposure to glyphosate and the similarity between sulfate and glyphosate, and what Stephanie Seneff has written about with glyphosate taking the place of sulfate in the formation of proteins, perhaps. I mean, this hasn't been proven, but it's a good thought and a good theory. And so in order to counteract the harms of the ever-present glyphosate toxicity in our society, we really need to probably supplement sulfate in our diet, and possibly even just take supplemental sulfate in the form of something like chondroitin sulfate. All right, so yeah, to get some of the deeper scientific details of this, listen to Chris Masterjohn's public recordings on omega-3 toxicity. Helena says, could having an active foot fungal infection, which are extremely stubborn to treat and get rid of, make someone more susceptible to long COVID? Wondering if the immune activation of an active fungal infection is part of what tips the scale to full-blown overactivation of the immune system after COVID. I don't know. I'm not sure what the answer is. I want to say no, that I don't think that that's a problem, but might be wrong. But it might reveal something about your body and your immune system. And so not the fact that there's a chronic fungal infection, but like why it's there, right? So what's wrong? What's the issue that's making you prone to a fungal infection in the first place? And then, what's holding your body back from getting rid of it in the second place? The answers to those questions are the reason that you're more prone to long COVID. So yeah, whatever set the stage for that problem in the first place is going to set the stage for long COVID. That's what I think is happening. And again, I hesitate to say that the immune system is doing something wrong, even though it seems to be overreacting in people. It's trying to help you by removing the spike protein and other things. And it may not have all the, it may not be given all of the nutrients and building blocks and, supplies and things that it needs to do its job properly and, get rid of the problem so it becomes kind of a chronic issue. Or it's also possible that it just gets stuck it becomes so overactive that it's not doing the right thing anymore. That's also obviously a possibility. So in cancer, certainly the cancer cells are not doing anything in your best interest. If they're growing out of control, eventually they can kill you, and then they'll also die along with you. So that makes no sense. So that's kind of like cells that have gone crazy. They've gone mad. They're no longer working together with everything else in your body for a purpose, a beneficial purpose. So it's possible that something like that is happening in some people or all people who have long COVID. Certainly, that's one of the possibilities that we have to consider. Chris says, Chris Masterjohn wrote an extensive article about serum ferritin. Can you please explain in layperson's terms, and is plasma donation still a recommendation for decreasing these levels? Yeah, so that's going to take a little bit more work and research and thinking through it. So I can't do it off the top of my head, but that's a good idea. Maybe I can go and rewrite his article in layman's terms and publish an article on it. So so serum ferritin is a complicated subject. He also recently published a series of tweets on ferritin as well, which were interesting. Maybe he just took his article and republished it in tweet form, but a whole series of tweets that was on serum ferritin. The issue with serum ferritin is it's you're not we first of all don't even fully understand it. We don't know what it's doing there in the serum. We don't know why it's there. So it's a bit of a mystery. So and the other thing is that so first of all, we're not sure what it's doing, and when we check it, we're not sure what it means. Does it mean that there's inflammation? Does it mean that there's more iron being stored? What does it mean? Why, if there is more iron being stored, why is that? Is it to help fight off infections? So there's a lot of questions. And in order to try to figure out what's going on, he has a protocol which we can follow if patients want to. Where you have to check other things as well, along with the serum ferritin. And I'm not doing it justice, right? So this isn't a good explanation, but a recommendation for decreasing high levels. I mean, the first thing you do, it's a marker of inflammation and possibly chronic infection or infestation with a parasite or something, right? Similar to elevated cholesterol, right? So and again, I would hesitate to say that it's a problem on its own. It's a maneuver. It's trying to help you in some way, similar to the high cholesterol, trying to help you against something else. So it itself is not the problem, but it's a marker of another problem. And it's not just a marker, but it's something that's being done by the body to help you fight off the actual problem. So we need to address what's causing the inflammation if you want to lower serum ferritin. So that's the key thing. And if you don't know what it is, then you have to try to figure out what it is. And if you've done everything, dotted every I, crossed every T, then there's still something missing, right? There may be an infection or an infestation that's undiagnosable. We just don't have tests that will diagnose it, in which case, sometimes you do something like chlorine dioxide, or you do a specific parasite cleanse kind of protocol. And those things, some of them, like chlorine dioxide, they have broad spectrum coverage for a lot of infections and infestations, and they help your body get rid of whatever it is. And along the way, if you start to really suspect that this is the issue, it can take a while. It can take weeks to months to get past all the biofilms. You might need to take biofilm disruptors and other things to help to fully get rid of the problem. I think I missed one here. Maureen said, I'm wondering if more cases of exocrine pancreatic insufficiency are surfacing since COVID. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I don't know. I haven't looked at any primary data. And unfortunately, a lot of this data gathering, we don't get updates regularly enough. So like cancer incidence rates and things, they don't get updated like monthly. Even sometimes yearly. I mean, there's a delay in reporting updates on incidence of various diseases. Susan says, any suggestions for constant dizziness since having COVID 2.5 years ago? I feel like I'm on a rocky boat. Yeah, so definitely, if you just did one thing, I would suggest the brain detox cream that my friend and colleague Shabazz put together and has had great success with. So it's very, very relaxing and really helps promote deep, restful sleep, and helps to promote the detoxification of the brain. So it opens up the pathways in the neck. So you apply it to the neck. You put some propolis on the neck, and then you put the cream on top of the propolis, and then you put a castor oil pack around it and just go to sleep. So that's where I would start. That's number one. And, you can look into mind-body medicine and stuff, which can be tremendously beneficial for dizziness. You can look into some sort of head and neck therapist who, like craniosacral therapy. Again, this is very, very practitioner specific. Some people are going to be fantastic and amazing, and other people are just not going to do anything for you. Maybe try chiropractic. Whether you believe in it or not, just give it a try. Go to somebody and see what happens. So yeah, even if I can't explain what's going on, I mean, they have some theory about what's going on and how that works. I can't fully explain it. I don't really understand, but it definitely seems to there seems to be something, even if it's a placebo. It's okay, right? If it takes a placebo effect from a chiropractor to get you better, if that works, it works, right? So it could be a functional issue, and a functional issue can be fixed with a placebo, right? So whatever it takes to fix it, go ahead and try it. But definitely, I think brain detox is a good place to start to remove things that have built up in the nervous system. Julie says, have you heard complaints from the solar flare storm a couple of weeks ago? Northern Lights phenomenon combined with the electromagnetic HAARP testing up in the skies. I got a migraine and felt spacey and down, really fatigued for the following week. I guess my really effective $2,000 migraine brain treatments this past year were no match for that. I've been improving some this past week. This is the first I've heard somebody complaining about it, but I'm sure that a lot of people were affected by it. So solar flares are definitely associated with worsening medical problems, increased admissions to psychiatric hospitals and regular hospitals as well. So it's a real thing. People are sensitive to electromagnetic fields and changes in the electromagnetics of the atmosphere. So I don't know that there's much you can do about it, right? These are like acts of God. How can you avoid them or escape them? But if you optimize other things, then you can become less sensitive to those things. So that's a bigger project, though, right? I don't know that there's some a simple solution for being affected by solar storms. But spending more time outside, avoiding non-natural electromagnetic fields. It's possible. Maybe there's some way, maybe if you spend more time in the sun and more time grounding and all these things when a solar storm happens, maybe that would help protect you. And maybe it's better to be outdoors rather than indoors. Maybe camping is better than staying inside. I don't know, so that would be interesting. I don't know much about it. But, even though like maybe what's making you worse during the solar storm is the way it's interacting with non-native EMFs and not the storm itself. Who knows, right? So, well, I'm sure somebody knows, but not me. So, sometimes you have to get creative and try things that you wouldn't expect would work. So it might not be that the thing itself is harmful. It might be something about the situation that that thing is, being manifested within that is leading to it seem to be harmful. So it's kind of the same as a tweet I recently put out about like diabetics. So sugar is, a molecule that the body uses, and everyone or almost everyone should be able to utilize sugar and eat things that have sugar in them and tolerate them. And, you'll see, Lufkin, I think, Robert Lufkin or whoever, posts these infographics of like, look at how many spoons of sugar are in like an apple and an orange and, this and that, and sure, they have a lot of sugar in them. But again, they're a whole food, and like a human being should be able to eat an apple and not have like sugar go crazy, sugar spikes. So my point here is that sugar is not the root cause problem. It is a superficial problem. And once your metabolism is not working, avoiding sugar will make you better. It will lower your blood sugar, it'll help you start to lose weight. And some people will do that long enough, and then a switch will flip, and suddenly they won't have diabetes anymore. They'll be trim and fit, and they'll stay that way for a while. And then they'll actually be able to go back to eating sugar normally without developing diabetes. But I think what's actually happening is that there's other things that are setting the stage for you to become intolerant to sugar in the first place. So vegetable seed oils especially, but also toxic light and other things, right? So the whole, all of them, all the toxins and lack of nutrients all together. But there are probably some bigger ones like the seed oils and the light exposures and the lack of good sleep because you spend too much time under artificial lights after sunset. So, and the same thing with sun. So sun, I think, is very, very beneficial, but some people are intolerant to the sun, and some people burn very easily, and some people, and some people might develop, cancer. And it's not the sun itself that's the problem. It's the fact that, again, you've been eating the wrong foods. People who stop eating vegetable oils, within a year or two, they stop burning. They don't burn in the sun anymore. So the cell walls, like their body has been built out of the wrong thing. It's like if you contracted somebody to build a city and, you asked them to build it out of concrete and instead they built it out of mud. Okay. So people have been building their own bodies out of the wrong thing, which is toxic to them and is harmful, and it has to be removed. And it can't be removed all of a sudden. It has to slowly be replaced by the good bricks, right? The bad bricks have to be taken out and the good bricks have to be put in their place bit by bit, so that the entire body doesn't fall apart. So then things will start working properly. You have to get sun in the morning to help you tolerate sun later on in the day. You have to stop putting toxins on your skin, in the form of sunscreen, and stop eating toxic foods and avoid the toxic lights. Again, the toxic lights keep coming up. So when you do those things, then you don't get skin cancer in the sun. So and the sun is beneficial. Even then, I mean, there's a sweet spot dose for everyone for sun, right? So I'm not saying that everyone should be in the sun all day long. You should be in the sun just the right amount for your physiology and your skin type. And then the rest of the time, being outdoors all day is very beneficial, but under some shade or something, or cover your skin with some clothes and wear a hat or something to once you get to the dose that's appropriate to you for sun. Jermaine says, prior to COVID, I had gastritis. This is what helped. It went away in 2 weeks. I took DGL licorice tablets, chewable per the label. I took raw cabbage as a source of L-glutamine. And also took an L-glutamine supplement. I took aloe vera juice, amazing. It's at Walmart and health food stores. You want the kind that's non-laxative. I think the full leaf aloe vera juice, and ideally just get some aloe vera and juice it at home. Pink chewable Pepto-Bismol tablets and zinc carnosine. Gastritis is typically caused by H. pylori, which is a bacteria. I think of it as a mini ulcer. It responded very well to this treatment. Very interesting. I would. So there's two possibilities here. One is that, you could have done nothing and you would have gotten better in 2 weeks. And the other possibility is that what you did helped you get better. So some of those things are certainly beneficial for healing the gut, like the L-glutamine and the licorice and the aloe vera and the cabbage and all of that stuff. So support most of them, but would reconsider some of like the Pepto-Bismol. And let's see if we have any other last minute questions here. I don't think so. Do we have any live questions, Linus? Or any other live questions? Let me check out my Twitter feed. Most people are on Twitter who watch. And I don't think we're streaming to Facebook anymore. I'm not sure what happened, but we got disconnected from Facebook. We'll try to reconnect, hopefully. All right, yeah, I don't see any replies to my live stream. Let's see, anything else? All right, guys, I'm about to jump off. So if there's any burning questions, let me know. Do you know anything about the progression of nephrocalcinosis? So the kidney is becoming calcified. So basically, you're going to have calcium being deposited in the bulk of the kidney and also the tubes of the kidney, so the kidney parenchyma. And obviously, that's going to interfere with the kidney's ability to function. So why would it happen? So calcium being deposited in the wrong place, I mean, I'd have to do some deep research to figure out, beyond what you'll read in medical textbooks, why it's happening in a particular person. So you have to, I think you really have to not ask about a disease on its own, but ask about the disease in a particular person. And then you can figure out why it's happening. Obviously there's going to be some overlap in everyone who has it, but there's also probably going to be something specific to that, particular person. But one possibility, it's got something to do with K2, perhaps, just a thought here that there's not enough K2 to put the calcium into the where it needs to go, into the bones. And the other possibility is that it's a problem with the vascular system, and just like hardening of the arteries in the heart, you've got something going on in the kidneys. It's interesting. I'd love to do some research on it and figure it out, but it's not a very common problem, so it's not something that I've thought about deeply. Yeah, and probably a lot of the treatments may not be helpful, but some of them might. So thiazide diuretics, dietary salt restriction reduces kidney calcium excretion. Often hydrochlorothiazide is used. It's as appropriate to use if the serum calcium level is not high, am I correct? What calcium metabolism is linked to vitamin D and parathyroid hormone and K2, and again, vitamin D is linked directly to sunlight. So it's probably got something to do with sunlight and lack of sunlight primarily, right? So there's probably an issue related to sunlight. I'm not sure what the link would be though, because sunlight usually is going to raise vitamin D, which is then going to go on to increase calcium absorption from your food. So there might be something downstream of sunlight as well, like lack of K2, like I said in the beginning. And it also might be related to toxic indoor lighting. Not enough sunlight and getting the wrong kind of light that's stimulating in the wrong way, or overdoing vitamin D supplementation. It could be an autoimmune issue, right? Interfering with, something. So anyway, I'd love to know more about the case so that, you could think about what might be causing it, why calcium is depositing specifically in the kidneys and not somewhere else. But yeah, I don't know. Methylene blue, what are your experiences? I started for brain fog for the past 4 days, only 4 drops in water, and it feels weird. Sleeping in a day, but not at night. Sleeping in the day, but not at night. Just doesn't feel right. Is this just a good reaction to toxins, so I should keep on going? So when you take methylene blue, people who do take it, I haven't taken it myself, and not a lot of my patients have taken it either. Actually, I did try it. I've tried, I know a couple of people who have tried it personally, and we didn't notice any benefit. But the people who do it more often, they suggest that you spend more time in the sun when you take it. That seems to help improve its effects. So you would want to spend a lot more time outdoors in the sun, and certainly you would want to sleep at night, not during the day. It's hard to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing when you don't feel good, but my suspicion would be that what you're describing doesn't sound like it may not be a good thing, but I just don't know, so you got to experiment with these things. And in some people, they do not react well to methylene blue. So it's not a harmless substance. Some people find it to be harmful for them. And it's not just a Herxheimer or something that they just have to push through and get better. In general, if it is a Herxheimer or like a worsening of the symptoms or new symptoms, some sort of Herxheimer thing, you're not supposed to just push through it. You're supposed to decrease the dose, and then try to ramp it up slower. Either stop or decrease the dose so that symptom goes away, and then resume it at a lower dose when the symptoms are gone, and gradually work your way up without having negative symptoms. So you don't want to have negative symptoms. So it's not a good thing. But yeah, I honestly, unfortunately, I don't know that much about methylene blue because I hesitate to use it. It seems to me like a crutch for the mitochondria. It does boost the mitochondria's ability to make energy, but sunlight does the same thing, and most people just don't get enough sunlight, and they don't avoid the light after sunset. If they just did that, they probably wouldn't need to do the methylene blue. And it's certainly, I just prefer more natural approaches than drinking a dye. Also for the brain fog, the first thing I would do is just bite the bullet, buy the ingredients for the brain detox cream, put them together in the blender, and put it on your neck and see what happens after a couple of weeks. It's really, really effective. What contributes to the shortness of breath? So like I said earlier, it's going to be kind of like a software problem where the subconscious breathing patterns have been disrupted. That's number one. That's the first thing you should address. So breath work, breathing exercises, Buteyko breathing, and other pranayama breathing exercises. Just find like a YouTube video that gives you, shows you how to do like 3 dozen pranayama breathing exercises, and go through them and see which one seems to benefit you, because some of them will make you feel worse and others will make you feel better. But sometimes the ones that make you feel worse in small quantities, they're actually what you really need to do. So it's always best to consult somebody who knows what they're doing, who's like a yogi or something, a practicing yoga practitioner, or an active yoga practitioner who knows about pranayama yoga. But yeah, I mean, Buteyko breathing would be a good place to start. You can find those exercises on YouTube, and they do require you to feel uncomfortable in order to get better later. So usually you're going to have to go through the discomfort. But just short periods of Buteyko breathing, even though it's slightly uncomfortable, it's not meant to be very uncomfortable, will usually leave people feeling a lot better after they do it. Also, going back to the earlier brain fog question, Buteyko breathing also is very effective in many patients for brain fog. And the other thing that you can do is beyond just breathwork exercises, if you have access to it, or if you're willing to buy it, you can do exercise with oxygen therapy. That seems to be beneficial for people who have long COVID and vaccine injuries and chronic fatigue syndrome and shortness of breath. What else can contribute? Yeah, so you can have inflammation, but in most people that's not the case, or at least it's not macroscopic inflammation. It's not sufficient enough that you can see it on a CT or MRI. Most people, when they get the CT and MRI, there's no structural issues. Like I was saying in the earlier question, you could have mitochondrial dysfunction, you could have autoimmune issues, you could have like a microscopic level of inflammation, that you could have a problem with the oxygen delivery to your tissues, perhaps, right? So it's not actually in your lungs, maybe, but it's a vascular problem where there's vascular inflammation and the vascular system's not delivering oxygen to tissues properly, and so you feel like you're not getting enough oxygen. You have some air hunger. So really a lot of things, but I think most people need to focus on their neurological system. Again, brain detox with the brain detox cream, and retraining their subconscious breathing patterns. So retraining the nervous system so that they are sending the right signals to their lungs in the first place. That in many cases resolves the problem. Along the way, there's a lot of other things you can do to support getting better. An anti-inflammatory diet, getting a lot of sun, getting fresh air, and also people tend to become too obsessed with their problem, which prevents them from getting better sometimes. So that's part of what mind-body medicine will teach you to become less hyper-focused on your problem and allow it to just go away. on its own. Oftentimes it does. So if you get too focused on something, the focus itself can keep that thing going. It can, so this is something that, it's part of human health that is probably underappreciated, that spending too much time thinking and obsessing over something, it will tend to, make it difficult for the body to let go of it. So that's something that should be understood by people. I understand that, people are uncomfortable and they really want to get better and all of that, but you have to have more going on in your life. You have to have a grander purpose and a bigger reason for getting better. And you have to put your focus on that rather than on the illness itself. So you have to be focused on the why of getting better instead of the illness. So anyway, people need balance, right? So, there's some time you spend thinking about it, some time you spend going down rabbit holes, some time you spend doing research. Try to avoid, negative influences and negative beliefs about the illness. That's pretty important. And then you have to have a period of time where you shut off your brain and stop thinking about it, right? So you can't be hyper-focused on a problem all the time, and it just won't let you. Oftentimes you'll have trouble resolving it, and if you do that. Okay, everyone, really enjoyed it. Appreciate you guys watching, and please like and subscribe wherever you're at, and let other people know about this, that people can get better. I mean, I continue to see patients every week, every day, who are getting better from this. People are healing, and everyone's journey towards healing is different. But I've seen people go from severe to completely normal, and I've seen people go from mild to completely normal, and I've seen people go from moderate severity to completely normal. And yeah, it's definitely possible, and sometimes it just takes time, and other times it takes finally just deciding I'm going to do the thing that I haven't wanted to do. I didn't want to do it. So some people are stubborn, and I think it's always good to keep reminding yourself, because we human beings just forget. We're just constantly forgetting, and we want to forget, right? So some things we're over-focused on, and some things we're under-focused on, chronically under-focused on. But it's helpful to reframe your situation in a positive light so that you don't feel bad about it, right? So the troubles that you're going through are ultimately beneficial for you, whether you resolve them or not. There is, like a silver lining to every cloud. And, the more you believe, if you believe in God and a higher power, then it's apparent, if you think about it for some time, that since God is good, right, the things that appear bad are not actually bad. They just look like they're bad, right? There's a famous story or aphorism in, I think, ancient China, about the farmer whose son breaks his leg, and the neighbor comes and says, "Oh, what a terrible thing has happened." And the farmer's like, "Let's see. We'll wait and let's wait and see." And then there's a war, or I'm not going to get the story right, but a war breaks out, perhaps, and this country goes to war, but the kid doesn't get drafted. And the neighbor is like, "Oh, it's so wonderful, your kid didn't get drafted." And the farmer's like, "Let's wait and see." And so there's this on and on, more and more things happen, and it's alternating, something that seems good, and then something that seems bad, and then something that seems good. So with each new thing that happens, the previous judgment of the neighbor turns out to be incorrect. The neighbor's always incorrect. I mean, there's always something that comes next. That's just a funny way of making the point. But in our lives, what really happens is very similar, that sometimes the things that we think are really great turn out not to be so great in the long run after 10, 20 years. And the things that we think are terrible sometimes turn out to be the best things that ever happened to us. So you don't know whether something is good or bad until you see the fruits of that thing, until you see what happens later. And you don't see the ultimate fruits of it until after your death in the next world. So I think you have to give the creator the benefit of the doubt. And once you make that realization, keep reminding yourself of it, and then you're grateful for everything that happens to you and other people, assuming that there's something good in it, and trying to figure out what the message is. What is this revealing about me, and what I need to work on? So the underlying deeper issues that people are dealing with that stem from their childhood, that are related to their illnesses and their discomforts and their suffering, it's related to things that are still imperfect within their soul. So what's important for people to understand is that all the virtues are like the middle path between two extremes. So the virtue is not on one extreme and then the sin is on the other extreme. It's like there's a virtue that's in the middle, and to both sides there are extremes. You can have an extreme version, it seems like an extreme version of the virtue, and a deficiency, but actually both of them are wrong. So you can be a workaholic, or you can be a extremely lazy person, or you can work just the right amount. And a lot of people, when they have what they consider to be a virtue, they're usually overdoing it. And this, the things that we commonly overdo in the modern world are things like we work too much, we overdo things, we overthink, we over consume, not just food, but information, right? So overconsumption of things in general is one of our problems. And so you want to move everything, all your virtues towards the center, towards the middle path, and towards balance. So you spend an equal amount of time working and thinking as you do not thinking, and resting and sleeping. People need to balance things. And this life, what it does is it's giving you constant feedback about where you're imbalanced. So you have to ask yourself, what is the feedback that I'm getting? What does it mean? Where is my imbalance that I need to work on right now? And that's the next step. When you take that next step, the suffering that you have right now disappears, and you unlock a new level and you move on. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. All right, bye-bye.